Yo, what is going on, y'all? It is your boy AT from AT's Barstool, and today we are back with another video, and we are on episode 6. And today we are going to be talking about the DIAA playoffs, aka the DIAA recap, and giving out my predictions. If you guys are new to this channel, please like, comment, and subscribe. I will really appreciate it. And not only that, please like the video. I want to get up to at least 10 likes in today's video. Not only that, I'm trying to get up to 50 subscribers by the end of March. And if we can do that, I'll really appreciate it, and we can finally go live officially. So now, the first thing we are going to be talking about today is the first round of state playoffs for the DIAA, the John Dickinson Rams versus the St. Andrew Saints. In that game, the St. Andrew Saints ended up winning this game 43-32. In that game, Zamir Crawford from Dickinson had 11 points, and Jair Wright was held to 12 points with 9 boards, and he also had 2 steals on the defensive side of the ball. He had a pretty solid game, and overall, they did not play that well. Also, Isaiah Armour from Dickinson, he played a pretty solid game, and he had a really good defensive game where he had 2 steals and 3 blocks, while guarding Darnell Lloyd, and also had about 6 points and 9 rebounds. In that game, Isaiah Armour had to do one of the hardest tasks, and that's to stop the 6'10 center Darnell Lloyd from St. Andrews, who was only held to 4 points. Yes, he was held to 4 points less than Isaiah in that game, and Isaiah completely dominated the paint despite the loss on the defensive side of the ball. And in that game, Elijah Proctor Moore, also from St. Andrews, he only was held to 7 points, knocking down 1 3, and shot really bad from the field, as I think he missed about 15 shots that game. And in that game, they played really, really bad. Him and Lloyd played a really bad game, and the only reason why they won was because of their shooting guard, Joshua Ho. In that game, he had 13 points, knocking down 3 threes, and also had some putback layups to get this team up, not only up, but to win the game. And not only that, everybody else pretty much put their quarter in and had their little 2 points or 1 point for St. Andrews. Also in that game, Dickinson only had 4 people score, which 3 of them we already mentioned earlier. Jair Wright, who had 12, and Zamir Crawford, who had 11, and Isaiah Armour, who had 6 points himself. And the other person we have not mentioned yet was Levitt Horsey. In that game, he only made 1 3, and that 1 3 was at the buzzer beater before halftime. They got the lead down to 2 points when Dickinson was down 14-19, and he made the 3 to make it 17-19. Overall, it was a really good game, really good environment, and St. Andrews ended up coming out on top, where they scored 12 points in the third and fourth quarter alone, win the game to Dickinson's 10 points in the third quarter and 5 points in the fourth. In that game, Dickinson missed about 7 free throws, which ended up costing them the game in that second half. And Dickinson was in control that first half, and even though they was down by 2, they was up for a while in that first and second quarter. Well, in the whole first quarter and beginning the second. But St. Andrews ended up catching fire on the offensive side a little bit, and Dickinson could not score at all, while they got blocked several times at the rim. In that game, the final score, at the end of the game, the final score was 43-32. Really low scoring game, and in my opinion, it was a really good game, really good environment, and it was just a defensive game for both teams, while holding the team's best players to less than 15, which I was really surprised about. I was really surprised about that game, especially due to the fact that Elijah Proctor Moore, I said in the last video that he was going to probably have 15 and St. Andrews would lose by 2 points. But he didn't even have 15. He got held to 7 points, which I was really surprised, and shot really bad. And for Zamir, I thought he was going to have a good, 15, 20-point game, probably knock down a couple tough shots. He did that, but that was just not enough. His 11 points was not enough in that game to beat St. Andrews, and they got bounced out. I think that Dickinson team has a bright future, and Dickinson, we'll have to see what they do next year. They went 17-3, knocked out first round this year. And they're also graduating multiple seniors such as Samir Crawford, Jair Wright, Isaiah Armour, Levitt Horsey, Israel Blanco, Johnny Lewis. And yeah, that's really it. That's all the seniors are losing. 7 seniors. And Kevin Philly game will be coming back next year as their head coach, most likely. So yeah, we'll have to see what that Dickinson team does next year, especially the fact they lost a lot of seniors, or they're going to be losing a lot of seniors after this year. And now, for the next team that we're going to be talking about here, or the next game, is the Cape Henlopen Vikings versus the Wilmington Friend Quakers. In this game, Cape Henlopen won 56-52 in a tight matchup at Cape Henlopen, as the 13 seed ended up taking down Friends. And Cape Henlopen, man, they have been amazing. Their defense was really good in that game, and they also had a lot of buckets, which in that game, Downing and Jameson Tungle both had 15 apiece in that game, with a bunch of dunks and a couple tough shots to help this team win. Also in that game, Robbie Tattersall, he played his final, and I mean his final, his last official game as a Quaker, and we'll be seeing him play football at Harvard next year, as he had a solid game where he had 22 points, knocking down several tough mid-range shots over defenders, and just had a good game overall. It was just a really good game overall. That's all I gotta say for the Cape Henlopen and Wilmington Friends game. And Cape Henlopen went on to the next round to play Seaford, which we will talk about later in this video. Now, the next team we are going to be talking about here is the Middletown Cavaliers, the 22 seed versus 11 seeded MOT Mustangs. Winner plays Sanford. In this game, Middletown had a really good game, and they just absolutely dominated back offense and defense and beat them 63-49. In that game, King Xavier, yes, Middletown sophomore center, he ended up putting up 26 points, knocking down 3 threes, and had a couple tough buckets to win this game. And Jalen Murphy, another sophomore, he had 10 points in that game in the victory over MOT. And for the Mustangs, Caden Briscoe had a solid game, putting up 11 points, knocking down 3 threes, where he had a pretty solid game, and he was just really good from the three-point line that game. Nothing much said. And he will be back next year, too, for his senior year, most likely. Another guy that was also pretty solid for them was Grelin High, who's a sophomore. He had 9 points and 8 boards. And he was another guy. He's their other big man besides Kufe Apuko that is going to be coming back. Well, Apuko is not coming back, but Grelin High will be. And Apuko in that game was actually held to 7 points in that game. Really disappointing game for him. But what a tough way to come out or to close out the season. And MOT is out the playoffs officially. Another guy, too, on that team before I go to the next one is Javon Gibbs. Javon Gibbs had a solid game, putting up 10 points, having 2 steals, and he was 6 for 14 from the free throw line as he played his last official game as a Mustang. MOT, at the end of the day, MOT Charter is losing out on guys like Apuko and Gibbs, who I talked about earlier, and they will be returning a couple pretty solid players and some key players such as Caden Briscoe, Grelin High, which we talked about earlier, who had good games, or not good games, but solid games in the tournament. And at last but not least, Sean Thompson, their starting point guard, the left-handed point guard. He will be back for MOT next year. And this Charter team, they could be some special next year too. I definitely believe this team can make it to the playoffs. It just depends on how they execute in all these other games that they have to play next season. And the next game we are going to be talking about here for the first round is Early College versus William Penn. In this game, Early College had a solid, not a solid, but they had a solid, well, not a solid, but they had a really bad scoring game where the only scorer or the only guy who put up 20 plus, or not 20 plus, but put up 10 points or more was Elisa Dixon Johnson, who was really good. Yes, he was the best player on Early College. He went into every game and everybody knew that he was the best player, and they would have to key on him. In that game, he had 20 points, and overall just had a good game, offense and defensively, while his team could not execute. And he had, not only did he have 20 points, but he had 20 out of 38. So the rest of the team scored 18, and that is pretty disappointing to see, especially if you're a senior playing your final high school game in the playoff game. And despite them playing against a really good team like William Penn, they just didn't play good overall, and everybody was just out of their minds in that game. And for William Penn, they had a really good game where Aaron Whitaker had 16 points, 3 steals, and knocked down 3 three-pointers. He has been one of their better shooters this season, and he's been phenomenal his freshman year. So far in his freshman year, as William Penn, they went on to the next round and are having to face against none other than the St. George's Hawks, who is the 4 seed. Also, in that game, Ryan Valdez Ramirez, a senior point guard for William Penn, he had 15 points, had 3 steals, and knocked down 2 threes in that game. William Penn also, they had a lot of steals in that game. I think they had like 11 steals to MOT's, like, not MOT, early colleges, 2 steals or whatever, I don't know. But it was just a really good game for them. And also, another guy who bought out another 2 guys was another senior in Andy Webb. He had 8 points, 11 boards, and 2 blocks. And Kendall Riley Garlick, who had 8 points and 3 rebounds. Not 3 rebounds, 3 steals. My bad for the mistake. And yeah, overall, they played really well. William Penn played some great defense, holding them to under 40 points. Not only that, early college scored over 10 points in 1 quarter. That was the only time. The only time was the second quarter. And in that game, William Penn played great. And that's really it for the first round recap. As for the other games, Sally's won. They took down St. Mark 63-48. I was at that game. RJ had 20 points. That was a really good game. Not first round, my bad. That was second round game, my fault. But yeah, all the other games, they were, not that great. Like Central, they ended up not beaten, but they lost to Smyrna 70-34 in a blowout. In the other games too, the other playoff games, St. Mark's beat DMA 54-41. Apple beat Lake Forest. Also, Odessa beat Laurel, I think, with a final score of 61-78. And that was it for the first round, and we are going to be going on to the second round. Second round of the state playoffs. The second round, we are going to start off with William Penn versus St. George's. This was a really good second round game. George's won 43-39 in that game. Joshua Orbita had 17 points, 7 rebounds, in 3 for 5 from the free throw line in that game. He had a really solid game. Emery Womack had 8 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists. While on the other hand, Harold Best had 8 points and made 2 threes in that game to win them this game. And for William Penn, Andy Webb had 11 points, 10 rebounds. Couldn't really get blocks over St. George's, over a bunch of Giants and all that, and a bunch of guys who's athletic. And then Ryan Valdez Ramirez had 7 points, knocking down a 3, and went 2 for 2 from the free throw line, which that's the reason why they stayed in this game. Free throws really saved them. And then Kendall Riley Garlick, once again, we're talking about him again. He was held to 6 points, but he also had 5 steals. Really good defensive game, but the rest of the team couldn't help to get them to win. And St. George's advanced to the state quarterfinals, which they'll be playing against Smyrna today or tomorrow. Yeah, one of those days. Now, the next game we're going to be talking about here, Howard Wildcats versus Odessa. This was one of the more exciting games in the state quarterfinals. In this quarterfinal matchup, Howard took down Odessa 54-52, and why this was exciting was Odessa was up. They was up by 10 points, and at one point the score was 20-9 to begin the first quarter, which is really surprising. Jalen Mincaro played a really good game. I think he had about 20 points or whatever. And in that game, Caden Brown from Howard, the class of 2026 guard, he had 16 points, including 2 free throws to win them the game and put them up by 2 in the last seconds. Also, Howard had a really good effort. Not had, they ended up having a really good effort to beat Odessa, and they ended up winning this game by 2 points, which was really surprising. And it was just an amazing game with an amazing environment at Howard. And Howard is on to the state quarterfinals, where they'll be playing St. Elizabeth today, which that game is probably going on as we speak at Sally's. Also, the next game I do want to talk about, Conrad versus Smyrna. This game was probably a big upset too. Really surprising win for Smyrna. And in that game, Conrad was bad. Shane had 9 turnovers in that game, while Marcel had 12 points, knocking down a 3 or so. And in that game, Chase Sullivan, he had 27 points. He was just outstanding from the line and just played a really good game against Conrad, which they ended up beating Conrad by almost 20. The final score was 74-57. Smyrna put up 20 points in 2 quarters. Yes, the 2 quarters was the second quarter, they put up 20, and in the fourth quarter, they put up 23. And in that game, Conrad just couldn't get it going, and they ended up losing pretty badly. Also, in the next game, we're going to be talking about Apple versus St. E's. This was another really good game. 15 seed versus 2 seed here at St. Elizabeth. Final score was 43-38. It was a really good defensive game. Just like St. George's and William Penn, it was a defensive game. In that game, Kyan Alexander had 14 points and knocked down 3 threes, shooting 5 for 5 from the free throw line. He was really good in that game. And Kenny Hunter, the senior forward, he ended up having 14 points, 9 boards. It had 4 steals on top of that. As the senior forward ended up playing really well, and he leads his team to playing against none other than the Howard Wildcats that we just talked about earlier. Also, Steven Nixon was held to 5 points and didn't really have a good game, and that's probably another reason why it was so close in the first place. Also, Robert Price did step up. He had 7 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 steals. Played some really good defense, having to guard Howard's big man Dominic, and he played a really solid game. On top of that, for not Dominic, my bad, not Howard. We're talking about Apple here, my bad. And for Apple, Desai Drummond, he had 11 points, knocking down 2 threes, had a really good game. And the Apple Quillamink forward / quarterback for football, if you guys don't know, he's a quarterback. He ended up playing solid, and they ended up ending his junior year, sadly, because we already know. But in that game too, Dylan Griffin, he had 9 points, and Ryan Busby had 8 points, knocking down 2 threes of his own. In that game, Apple was really solid defensively and held St. Elizabeth to 43 points under 45, which I was really surprised about. And in that game, St. E's, they held Apple to 2 points in 1 quarter. Yes, and that was the third quarter where St. E's outscored Apple 2-14, and they ended up, and that was probably a big factor of why St. E's won that game in a close battle. All they had to do was score 10 points or more, and they ended up scoring 10 points to win that game, whilst Apple had to score 18 points to make it even close. It was a really good game overall, and St. E's is on to the next round, as Busby will be ending his senior season despite the loss. Busby and what Apple did this year, you guys don't understand, was really well. Daniel Harvey, he ended up tearing his ACL to begin with, and they thought that their season was pretty much over, or everybody thought it was. Everybody thought Apple was going to be bad, but that was not the case. And Ryan Busby, the man himself, he carried his team big time with the help of Desai Drummond and Dylan Griffin, which we also talked about earlier, and Terrence Harvey, the point guard, who's Daniel Harvey's younger brother or cousin. Apple, they had an amazing season, and with that being said, Apple season's officially over, and with that being said, they'll be returning a couple key players, such as the Cy Drummond and Terrence Harvey themselves. So yeah, it was a really good season for Apple, and St. Nice is on to the next. Now, with that being said, we are going to be talking about the biggest surprises in the playoffs and also the biggest disappointments, in my opinion. So far, we are 2 games in. Yeah, we are 2 games or 2 rounds deep into the playoffs. We are officially in the state quarterfinals. Well, today, the state quarterfinals will be starting, and on Sunday, we'll be having more games too at DSU and Dover soon. So, yeah, for the DIAA tournament. In this tournament, though, in my honest opinion, though, the biggest surprises in the playoffs so far has been Smyrna. The first team I'm going to talk about is the Smyrna Eagles. We talked about them earlier. This team was really, really good. This team, not really, really good, but they played really, really good so far in the first 2 games of the playoffs, and they are going to be playing against St. George's on Sunday at Dover, if y'all want to watch at 7 p.m. Smyrna's been really good in this game, not in the game, but so far in the playoffs. Chase Sullivan's has been on a whole different level. We already talked about his 27-point game, but not even that. It's the fact that Smyrna averaging 72 points per game throughout the first 2 rounds of the state playoffs, which has been really impressive. And in those 2 games, they put up 70 points against Central, which we talked about earlier in the first round of the state playoffs, blowing them out 34-70, which I was really surprised. I thought it was going to be a good game at Smyrna, and it ended up becoming a blowout and not really good game on Tuesday. Then on Thursday, 2 days later, they came to Conrad. Yes, the 5-seeded Conrad Red Wolves, and absolutely destroyed them, 74-57, and Sullivan had 27 points. Sullivan, this team is led by Maurice Kilgore, Chase Sullivan, and Logan Shaw, who's been on a whole nother level this year. And for this Murder team, man, they just been surprising. Their defense been amazing. The offense has been out of this mind. They looking like one of the more dangerous teams right now. And going into this quarterfinals matchup, and actually just for the rest of this playoffs, Smyrna, in my opinion, is probably one of the tougher teams. Not tougher teams to beat, but is probably one of the more underestimated teams. And I honestly think that they could go to the state semifinals and possibly to the state championship if they could somehow get around Dover if they go to the semis. But overall, Smyrna's been amazing. Chase Sullivan, he's been out of his mind all playoffs, and they have just playing amazing defense on top of that, holding Conrad to only 57 while they put up 74, and then the fact that they're going to hold Central to 34. Team. Yes, the same Central team that's led by David Maker, which that's really surprising. And yeah, overall, they've been really good. And they're definitely one of the more dangerous teams offensively that is going to be a big team to watch out for, or a team just to look out for overall. Also, the other surprising team I think we could all agree on this one, is the Cape Henlopen Vikings. The 13th seeded Cape Henlopen Vikings, they have not one but 2 big-time wins, taking down Friends in a 56-52 victory, which Downing and Tungle, they both had really good games, where they had 15 apiece, which we talked about earlier, put up 56 points to Friends 52. And also in that game, not in that game, but in the second round of the state playoffs, they ended up taking down Seaford 56-46, where Downing had an amazing, or not amazing, but an insane dunk during the final minutes of the fourth quarter, which was really crazy, which we'll show right here. Also, this Cape Henlopen team, man, they put up 56 points. They averaged 56 a game, and right now they are holding their teams to not barely, but they're holding some of the best offenses up under 50 points. Yes, which, if you don't know who I'm talking about, we're talking about number 3 seeded Seaford, which I think Seaford was one of the few teams, in my honest opinion, that I honestly thought that was going to go far. but they got knocked out in the second round, and Cape Henlopen went in their place and absolutely cooked them. This team has been amazing defensively and offensively. They're just doing their thing. They're moving the ball really well, knocking down threes, making their free throws like they should, and they're probably one of the most underestimated teams in the state of Delaware right now in the state playoffs. And I definitely think this Cape Henlopen team, if they keep it up, I definitely think they could go far. And yeah, that's all I gotta say about this Cape team. And another team I would say is surprised, but it's kinda not. It's a little bit controversial in my honest opinion. Is the Howard Wildcats? The Howard Wildcats, yeah, they played one game. They beat Odessa. Why are they not an underestimate, but a surprising team to you? Well, Howard not only did they beat Odessa by 2, but they came back. They was down by 10 all 3 quarters up until the fourth quarter, where they just absolutely came back and beat them. Where in that game, Caden Brown had 16 points and had 2 free throws to win them that game, and knocked off Odessa. Also, in my honest opinion, I thought Odessa was going to beat Howard by at least 5-10. And honestly, they actually surprised me and destroyed all my predictions. Not all my predictions, but my prediction for that second round. That will be it for the surprises and for my disappointments so far in this tournament. And these are all the teams that's been eliminated. The first team is Dickinson. I had high hopes for this team going into the playoffs. I thought Dickinson was going to probably be one of the more dangerous teams or be one of the lower seeds that's going to possibly have a deep playoff run. But they didn't even have a deep playoff run. They got knocked out first round to St. Andrews, who's not that good in my opinion. And their only good players were Darnell Lloyd, Elijah Practor Moore, and Joshua Ho, who's a solid player who was knocking down threes on them. But it wasn't even the fact that they lost to them. It was the fact that they only put up 32 points. That is probably one of the most disappointing performances all season, and probably one of the worst offensive games we've seen from Dickinson, especially due to the fact that the game was at home at Dickinson, and I thought they was going to put up more, putting up at least 50 a game at Dickinson, which I thought this Dickinson team was going to beat them by at least 2 points. Not only that, put up 54 points. They didn't even do that. Zamir Crawford was completely shut down. Jair Wright was shut down. And other guys like Carlin Hollis, Israel Blanco, and Levitt Horsey was just shut down that whole game and didn't give them no type of scoring except for Levitt, who barely scored and off that buzzer beater. Other than that, Dickinson, they didn't play well that game, and honestly, I think they should have won. Or I think they could have had it. Well, they did have a chance to win, but they just couldn't execute. And St. Andrews, pretty much the defense and the height of St. Andrews ended up carried them to that win. And yeah, it was just not a good game for Dickinson, as they were one of the teams that were definitely really disappointing. Also, another team that's another disappointment, pretty much I honestly think, and this is just my opinion, in my opinion only, is Conrad. Conrad, yes, they're a 5 seed. Yes, they are definitely disappointing to everybody. And do I think they was a waste of a first round bye? Yes, especially for a team who was completely hyped up. And honestly, I think they was the equivalent. In my honest opinion, I think Conrad was the equivalent to Dickinson, even though they don't have the height. They just had the shooting. They was like Dickinson, but the other way around. Dickinson, their strength was finishing. Conrad's, their strength was shooting. And all that, they were small. I think Conrad and Dickinson are the same team. But the fact that Conrad was a 5 seed, or the DIAA thought Conrad was a 5 seed, and just to get blown out by 18, or not 18, by 17, almost 20 points, to a Smyrna team who's led by Chase Sullivan and has that big three. While on the other hand, Conrad had guys like Vinny Starr, Jordan Kennedy, and so on. The fact that they only put up not only 57, which that's not surprising, putting up 50, I knew they was going to do that. But it was the fact they gave up 74 points to Smyrna. Yes, a 12 seed, guys. It was definitely one of the more disappointing teams, not getting knocked down in the second round and not even touching the quarterfinals to even have a chance to play at Dover against St. George's. That's why I honestly think there was disappointment. That first game was terrible, and I honestly think it was a waste of a bye for Conrad, or just in the state playoffs overall. And another team I want to talk about that was disappointment was Seaford, in my opinion. Seaford, they were a 3 seed. Yes, a 3 seed. We're talking about a top 3 team in the state, one of the best offenses in the state of Delaware, in my honest opinion, and from what I've seen. They put up about almost 70 points per game. The Seaford team, despite playing a bunch of downstate teams, the downstate teams, they're not bad, and the competition down there is solid too. I'm telling you. They had guys like Avion Matthews and Azon Matthews too. They also had some good players such as Jordan Smith and so on. And I thought this team was going to be really good, but they ended up being bad in the playoffs and lost to Cape Henlopen, who was a 14 seed, to a final score of 56-46 in the second round. And I thought this Seaford team would possibly had a chance of going to the state championship, but just like Conrad, they was just really disappointed, and their season was just kind of a waste with that second round loss. All them guys are returning, and which is good for them. But the playoff success or the chances of them making the playoffs, not making the playoffs, but winning a playoff game, and not only that, go to the state championship is going to probably be slim to a little bit to none next year, especially due to the fact of how they played. So I don't know if they're going to get that much respect that they got from the state of Delaware this year. And overall, they was just bad. They was just bad that game. So yeah, they are officially out the playoffs. And overall, not Smyrna, but Seaford was just disappointment, big time. That's it for my surprises and disappointments. And for my predictions for the state playoffs, let's get to the official games. Now, the first game we are going to be talking about here, it is probably going on right now. It is St. Elizabeth versus Howard, 2:30 at Sally's. This game, I think St. Elizabeth is going to win in a pretty solid matchup, 62-54. In my opponent's opinion, I think Kenny Hunter and Kyan Alexander are both going to have really good games. I think Kyan Alexander is going to probably have a good 15 points, knocking down 3 threes like he did last time. And I think Kenny Hunter is just going to work in the post while Steven Nixon gets it going on the defensive side and also get his scoring. Honestly, I think that the reason why I think that St. East is possibly going to win, or my opinion that St. East is going to win against Howard, is due to the fact that I honestly think they're going to completely shut down Bryson Lane, who hasn't really been the best in the playoffs so far. And Caden Brown is probably going to have to carry the load again. And Howard, that comeback victory over Odessa, I wouldn't say that was lucky, but I would say that was against a much less or a much worse opponent. And they're going to be playing a better opponent like St. Elizabeth, who can knock teams down by 30, 40, and 20. And they can definitely put up about 60 to 70 points a night if you don't play them right, or if you don't play your cards right. Honestly, I don't think Howard is going to stop St. E's with the amount of star power that St. E's have right now, and the advantage they have that the game is going to be at Sally's, which I think every time they play at Sally's, they play really good. Not only that, they just absolutely dominate whoever plays there with them. So yeah, St. E's, I got St. E's winning 62-54 in that first round matchup. I mean, not first round, quarterfinals matchup. Next, in the state quarterfinals, St. George's versus Smyrna, 4 seed versus 12 seed. Smyrna had a big upset. They are looking like one of the more dangerous teams in this state playoffs, as they are putting up 72 points per game throughout the first 2 games of the state playoffs. And I definitely think that St. George's is going to win, because St. George's has been playing great defense throughout this whole series, or throughout the whole playoff so far. And yeah, if they can hold William Penn to 38, I can definitely see them holding Smyrna to at least 47, and St. George's put up 53. Joshua Beta, I think he's going to have another good game. Not only that, I think he's going to have a cool little 20 ball. And Emery, he has a solid 10 and 10 game. I could see a double-double, or I smell a double-double. This game is going to be at 3:30 at St. Mark's. I did not mean to say Dover earlier. That was another game that's going to be at Dover, which we're going to talk about later on. And honestly, I think the St. George team has what they have, or yeah, I think that St. George has the tools to beat Smyrna. Not only that, stop Chase Sullivan, Maurice Kilgore, and do not let Logan Shaw get going. I definitely think so. They got the height, they got the talent, and I definitely think they got the players to win this game. Not only that, I definitely think they got the coaches, and I think they have the mental and physical ability to beat the Smyrna team, who's been on a roll so far, as they've been putting up at least 70 a game every single game in the state playoffs. So yeah, I have St. George winning, and that is my final bet. And the next game we're going to be talking about, which is probably going to be one of the second, probably one of the least, not the least, but probably one of the second least hyped up games besides St. George's Smyrna, and that's Cape Henlopen versus Sanford. Cape Henlopen, they've been on a roll. They've been holding their opponents really well as they've been playing great defense and been rebounding the ball really well and scoring solid. Precisely. Other than that, I still have Sanford beating Cape, but it's going to be a close game. 50-45. I don't think Cape is going to put up another 50 bomb again. And Jaden Taylor, man, he's been on a whole different level. And what they did to Middletown not last week, but on Thursday, 2 days ago, was insane. And at one point, the score was 29-6 in the first quarter. Yes, you heard me right, 29-6 at one point in the game to begin the game off with, and they took down Middletown with a final score of 75-53. Sanford's another team I think is going to be really dangerous and definitely go to the state semifinals this year and possibly the state championship out of their bracket. Or, yeah, out of the bracket. One of the few teams out of that bracket. So, yeah, Sanford, that's the reason why they took down a really good Middletown team who, in my opinion, I don't think Middletown should be a 22 seed, and they should really be like probably a 15, 16 seed, in my opinion, at least. So, yeah, uh, I got Sanford winning, and I think Jaden Taylor, Kareem Hunt, they're both going to have good games. Nico McNeil and Azar Elgood, I definitely think they're going to play some good defense and win this game tomorrow night against Cape. And for Cape, I don't think Downing is going to be doing that well, especially against guys like Kareem Hunt and Jaden Taylor, who's been playing the best defense of their career so far and has been up to the top of their peak right now, or currently up to their peak. Also, Tungo, I definitely think he's going to have a solid game himself, but I don't think he's going to be doing as good as he did the first two rounds of state playoffs. That's the thing. And it's not at Cape Henlopen, but still, I definitely think Sanford's going to win this game. And if Sanford can take down a team like Dover and take down a team like St. E's, then I can definitely, and I mean I can definitely see them take down a team of the caliber of Cape Henlopen, a caliber team like Cape Henlopen. The final score of 50-45. And then the last prediction, but not least, for the state quarterfinals. This is probably the biggest one amongst all, and it's mainly because it's going to be a state championship rematch from last year. The difference is they're having, well, it's be the Dover Senators and the Salesianum Sows. This is probably going to be one of the more hyped up games. The game's going to take place at DSU, and I think that Dover is going to win this game by 4. Yes, in a 54, not 4, by 2. 54-52. This game's at 7 p.m. at DSU. It is going to be at a college. And yes, I heard they was charging $18 per ticket, which is kind of crazy in my opinion, which I don't know what happened with my voice there, but in my opinion, I definitely see Dover winning, and they do have guys that's led by Javon Dennis and Terrence Williams, while on the other hand, for Sally's, they have RJ Johnson, Kevin Coleman, and Latrell Wright. And it's just going to be a really good game, and we'll just see out of them two teams which powerhouse is going to win out of the two teams, and it's going to be a really good game. I think it's going to be back and forth. And for Sally's, despite being 8-12, they have had the turnaround of a season. They have had a really good season and turn around their season big time. They started the year off 1-9, getting blown out almost every game. Coach Trev from Sally's getting ejected once at one point, and yeah, I definitely see Sally's winning this game, and not winning this game, but giving them a run for their money, if not possibly winning, because there is a good chance that they could win. So yeah, but Dover, but my final prediction is Dover winning, and they are the 1 seed. Not only that, Dover absolutely annihilated St. Andrews in a 58-34 win, while on the other hand, Sally's took down St. Mark's in their second round matchup, where Sally's beat St. Mark's 63-48, and at one point it was 49-29 during the fourth quarter. Other than that, though, that is my predictions for today, and thank you guys. Well, my predictions and recap, and thank you guys for enjoying this video. Hope you like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to follow my Instagram page at @Barstool. And with that being said, I will see you guys next time. Peace.